So let's start at the beginning with your endeavor. Would it be Reaper? The initial idea was the reaping of debt, which I found. I've listened to a couple of interviews that you gave, and I'm so fascinated by it, by this concept. But can you tell our audience a little bit about that, and then I can ask my questions, because it's fantastic what you've come up with.
Yeah, so our current economic system, which we all know and dislike, is the fiat system, and it goes along with the debt system. So right now, most people don't necessarily know this, but if you go take a loan from a bank, that money is not actually coming from the bank or from anyone else's account in the bank. What the bank does is they create a debt and they assign that debt to you. And that is the creation of money in the fiat system, aside from just Treasury printing and the Federal Reserve printing. So those debts that accumulate, we can only borrow so much. So it used to be in the 20s that somebody could go out and get a job, a 9 to 5, support a family of 4 to 7 kids and a spouse. And with that, they'd be able to put away 25% of their wealth for the 20 years, and they could retire and they could live out their years. It then evolved from the 20s when we went into the Great Depression. We came out of that with what was a push for 401ks and Roth IRAs and things of that nature that were playing in the stock market. Well, we also saw the confiscation of gold and the Executive Order 6201, in which Truman basically underpaid for that gold. And I'm getting a little off topic here, but I'll swing it back around.
That's all right.
So basically, over the years, what happened is our wealth and our labor, if you will, has been stolen, because now at the current date, we are taxed at 40% directly out of our paycheck, as well as Social Security and Medicare, which our generation will probably never see. And then you're also encouraged to put into these 401ks and these IRAs, as that's your retirement, even though the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, is also putting their toes into the equity market and buying stocks and bonds and those things that they can turn around and dump at any time. The politicians are getting rich. You still have sales tax, you still have use tax, you still have gas tax, you still have carbon tax, you still have capital gains tax, property tax. And at the end of the day, the way our current system works is you don't own anything. We're already there. You do not own anything. And what my system does is it turns that on its head. So currently, if you went to buy a house, you'd take out a 30-year mortgage, and that is you selling your future to pay for your present. You're going to work for the next 30 years to be able to live in that house. And if anything goes wrong, you're going to refinance it, and you're going to pull some money out, and interest rates might be different. And between inflation and interest and taxes and everything, at the end of the day, when you pass away and hand that to your kids, they're paying capital gains on it. They can't keep it. They have to sell it, and it's at a loss. So you really had nothing. You just worked your whole life so that you could afford to live. Now, what my system does is it turns that on its head, so that the labor you've done in the past, the money that you've been paid, is now something you can buy the token with. So you've tokenized your labor, and that labor, that work you've already done, is affording you a future, because now it can make payments towards those debts that you take on. So as you accumulate that tokenized labor, that Reaper token, now you've accumulated your borrowing power and your ability to afford yourself a higher quality of life into the future. And because it's self-custody, it's fully within your control, you can pass that on to your children when that time comes.
Wow. Wow. So I really liked how you said, you're selling out your present, you're selling out your future for your present life. Basically, you're burdening your future, not only your future self, but your future for your children, or any legacy that you might have been able to leave them, you're not able to do that in this current system. So you're saying people are going to, by buying the Reaper token, right? Is it a token or a coin? Okay.
It's a token.
That was another thing. I know I got confused in the very beginning of my journey. And I still get confused with calling them coins and tokens, because I know that there's a difference, right? What can you just real briefly, because you're so smart and good at explaining things, can you just briefly explain to the audience the difference between a token and a coin?
Sure. So a coin is something that is a currency. You're spending it, and that is really its only purpose. So Dogecoin, for example, even though it's a meme coin, it's something that you would go buy a coffee with at a Starbucks if you wanted to, because it's a coin. A token is something that's a ledger account. So it's something that we are now tokenizing it to see that you own it. It's not about spending it.
Ah, you know what? I've heard people explain this before, and no one explained it quite like that. That makes sense to me, what you just said. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And then our friend Gotta Be says coins are layer 1, tokens are built on those. That's how yeah, that is how I explained. That is how it was explained to me. But of course, that didn't make exactly that much sense when I heard about it at first. So okay, so Reaper is a token, and when people put money, so they buy these Reaper tokens, and then the Reaper tokens do what for them? So okay, first, are people buying them every week, every pay period? Is that kind of what people are doing? Or are they buying them at a certain, like just a bulk of them, or?
Well, so that's completely up to the holder or the person who wants to purchase an RPR token. You could buy it once and simply hold that one token till your heart's content. Or if you wanted a dollar cost average in, of course, that's always a good strategy. Some people, what I expect they'll do in the future is they'll snowball it off of their debt payments. So, for example, if you had a rental property and you were renting it out for $4,000 a month, but your mortgage on it's $2,800 a month, you have a $1,200 difference. If that $1,200 difference was put into RPR every month, it would accelerate the rate at which you're paying off the mortgage on that property. And then it would accelerate the rate at which you could take a cash out refinance to buy a second property and repeat the cycle. So this is really a force multiplier for those people who choose to use it in that way. Otherwise, if you're just making a $100 payment towards your mortgage per month on a 30-year mortgage, you actually end up paying it off about 7 years early, simply by reducing that interest that is accumulating on that mortgage.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you're actually tokenizing, I guess I would say. I mean, they've said that for a long time. If you pay off pay extra payments on your mortgage, you can cut your mortgage amount down significantly, over several years or whatever. You're using the Reaper token to do that. So how does that work? How does I heard you talk about connecting it with your debts. Once you set yourself up and you buy these Reaper tokens, where does the money come from to pay towards the debt? So without spending your Reaper token, how does that work?
So you wouldn't lose any tokens, and we're actually paying you a passive XRP drip as well every 2 weeks. But the way we do it is we started the ecosystem with 100 million tokens, and then each month we mint 1 million tokens. Now that is inflationary, but it is a deflationary inflation, because the first month it was 1%. The second month it's less than 1% because there's 101 million tokens, and we've only minted 1 million. So every month that additional 1 million is split up into every 2 weeks, and we sell it at market into the limit buy orders that are already placed on the books. The people who have said, I want more Reaper token, I understand what it is, I understand what it does, and I want some. So we are selling into whatever the market price is, and using those funds that we generate every 2 weeks, we've now we have funds that we can use to action the utility. The utility spread is that 50% goes towards debt reaping and reaping of tokens based on the votes of the holders. And every vote is honored, regardless of where you decided you wanted to send it. If there's a token or a debt that you voted for, we're going to do our best to go out and purchase that token and destroy it, or we're going to do our best to get that payment to your bank. Now, of course, we are in beta right now. It is a little rough. Some banks are a little bit rough around the edges and antiquated or archaic, but we are working those kinks out. With the other 50% of the funds generated, what we do right now is there's a 25% drip stimulus, so that's paid out immediately to all holders in the form of XRP. And we are also building a permanent drip fund. That permanent drip fund currently is about 454,000 XRP, which backs the RPR ecosystem. So that creates a floor, and that is to say that the total number of tokens divided by the total number of XRP, or excuse me, I have that the wrong way around. The total XRP divided by total number of tokens gives us our XRP floor price. Now that has historically risen every single reaping. So that means that our floor price continues to rise, and Reaper is always going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today. But also if XRP's price were to go through the roof, as it could do at any time, then that means there is a minimum price or value which Reaper would be worth, and it would go up with XRP as it continues to rise.
Wow. Okay, so I got to back up a little tiny bit. So the money that is used to pay to either burn these other tokens or burn the debt. Am I saying that right? Reap the debt. Yep. That money is from the new sales of people coming in to buy Reaper tokens, right?
So it's based off the market sale and market price. Yes. So every 2 weeks we do a market sale, and then the funds generated from that, determined by the community based on what they think it's worth at the current time, then that is the amount of funds generated.
And do you have a limit then? Okay, I'm sorry, because I'm asking, I hope I don't frustrate. We have 156 people watching. I appreciate you guys. Okay, so there's a specific amount that you sell every time. So you already know how many you're going to sell, and then the price is determined what the sale price is going to be, right? For new people or existing people wanting to buy more Reaper tokens. And then that is, am I misspeaking?
Well, so the price is determined by the buy orders. So we are selling into the buy orders.
Okay. You're selling into the buy orders. And so then once you get the revenue from the sale of the Reaper tokens that you just sold, then that money is distributed based on the different divisions that you've said, 50% is held for this and so much is held for that. And so then based on the amount that is for the reaping itself, then whatever you voted for, that little pool of money gets divided up into the holders of these Reaper tokens, no matter how many, depending on how many you have. And then that is how much money is going to get paid to either towards your debt or to burn the token that you want to burn. Am I correct?
Exactly. So each Reaper token has an equal value in how much control over the funding it has to direct. So that means that it's a completely egalitarian system where you're going to get back what you put in, and that's up to you. If you wanted to put $10 in, you're going to receive $10 worth of response, that fraction. And if you put in more, then you would be controlling that much more of the ecosystem.
Wow. So really, I mean, okay. It's kind of, it's dependent upon selling more Reaper, right? So if you didn't sell any more Reaper, say this month you sold none, what would happen?
So if we sold none, we would still have the permanent drip fund as a backing, but we are always going to be able to produce that additional 1 million tokens per month because of the way we've set up the protocol. And we are not a black hole token, but we are limited to that 1 million per month. So we know that there will always be more funds or more RPR coming into existence. And basically there is not really a scenario where we wouldn't be able to sell those additional tokens to bring in additional funds. It's just a matter of what is that worth to the market. If the market were to say that was worth what the floor price is, basically, then we would be selling those into the floor price. However, whatever is sold into that XRP floor is then burnt. So that would completely cancel out that mint while also bringing funds in, but a portion of those funds are then again added to the floor price. So that floor has still risen and we are still appreciating the value of Reaper.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can see, I'm just thinking, I'm trying to think this out in my mind. As the price appreciates, right? The more successful and people catch on to this and realize, perhaps I could take my paycheck and, I mean, this is how my mind, and tell me if I'm wrong in thinking this, I kind of am aligning it to, the principle of having a dependent care account, right? Where now this is completely different than but this is how my mind is working, just so you know. So with a dependent care account, you're getting a little tax saving by having this deducted from the paycheck, right? There's you will kick that for doing it, but they don't actually let you spend. You have to pay first, and then you get paid first. Accounts that they have set up, the government allows people to do to save taxes. But basically what people have to do in a sense is get themselves ahead by a couple of paychecks so that as they get paid back all the time, they're not missing a beat. They're not missing any money. And so when you're talking, and so I know while that is completely different than what you're doing, my mind is going to where if you could get yourself ahead, right, with this Reaper, and you get your paycheck and you buy more Reaper, and you're getting yourself more of a percentage in the pot that's going to go towards reaping your debt, you could actually use that like greatly to your advantage, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's where my mind is going with this whole thing. But I just wonder, like, as it gets, how much does it cost right now to purchase one Reaper token?
It's about 1 cent.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, all right. So right now, 1 cent is like, holy smokes, right? That's incredible. Eventually, as this gets, more people catch on. I'll just be honest with you guys. And some people are probably going to roll their eyes. And Rosemary will probably remember our conversation, but the whole Reaper thing kind of freaked me out. I'll tell you, it kind of turned me off a little bit because I was just like, oh, is this something evil? I don't know. I'm one of those people on the internet. I didn't understand really what this whole thing was about. And then of course I met you guys and I'm like, well, that doesn't reconcile. These guys are super smart and good people and fun and loving and caring. And so I'm like, all right, I'm totally misunderstanding. I knew Rosemary wouldn't be involved with anything that was bad. And so then when I started hearing your interviews with the reaping and the debt reaping, I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me. Right. This makes sense. But initially it took me a while to get on board with the whole thing. And, I don't know. I'm silly that way sometimes.
Well, and that's totally fair. I think you actually alluded to this earlier. So the Reaper is a little bit offstandish for a lot of people. And so we actually are kind of using that as a filter right now. We're not trying to market to the biggest crowd. We're trying to market to the high quality crowd. The people who will kind of dig into the white paper and see those things for now. and there will come a time where we have to, make this grandma friendly, so to
Yeah.
speak. But that's an evolution that we've got to get to. So for now, the people that are going to benefit the most are the people who are looking past certain things to see kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
But there is an element of filtering to what we do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds absolutely incredible. Like what a clever idea. It makes sense. I just wonder as the price goes up, like the more people that figure this out, like what my little eureka moment that I just had, thinking, gosh, if you could get yourself in Simon's right, it is very similar to the infinite banking concept. It's in line with that way of thinking. And to be able to use something new like this technology and tokenizing the debt and being able to kill that debt, I mean, that's just really cool. I just wonder as the price gets higher and higher, um how, how does that, like, where do you see that going? Say as it gets up to, $100 for one Reaper token, or do you ever see it getting that high? I mean, I'm not trying to, I don't really, I'm not talking about because like, oh, I want to make money off Reaper token. I'm just wondering as it expands, what do they call it? Scaling out or something? What does the scaling out look like for this?
So I'll put it this way. So I'm going to do it on the calculator right now, and I've never actually calculated this, but there's about $400 trillion worth of global debt right now. So I got million, billion, trillion. Okay, so $400 trillion, and the current supply is only about 127 million Reaper. Now, of course, it would take a while for those gain true adoption, but it would actually take us 8,600 years to have an equal supply to XRP.
Whoa, yeah.
So it is inflationary, but not very inflationary. If that's kind of my point. So let's say we're at, just for a round number, 400 million tokens, and that's probably about 15 years from now that we would reach that. Somebody can do the math, but so 400 trillion divided by 400 million would put it at 1 million. Now, I'm not saying that Reaper can reach $1 million in 15 years, but I'm saying that the debt that needs to be eliminated that is out there, and the amount of demand for Reaper certainly tells me that there's potential for growth. Now, I of course don't want to make a price prediction, but it does mean that if you buy $10 worth of Reaper today, and that's at 1 cent, and you have 1,000 Reaper, and it goes up to a price relative to the size of the market we're tackling, then that could be a significant difference and a significant amount of debt raping utility for that person.
Wow. So, oh man, see, this is why I say you have so many projects going. This conversation is I mean, I still have so many more questions when it comes to this, and I feel like this is a really important project that you've created, and the fact that it is built upon the XRP ledger. Now, here's a question. When you are not just anybody can connect and pay these debts. So what is going, how come my bank is going to allow Reaper Financial to attach and accept a payment from you on my behalf?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of coordination going on kind of behind the scenes. So when you log into our system and want to connect your debts, you're working with one of our partners, Plaid, who is Plaid. If many are going to be familiar with from crypto.com or Coinbase or other services that offer bank onboarding. But basically, Plaid is going to connect you to log into your bank. So as you log into your bank, it's giving us all of your metadata. It's giving us your name and connecting that with your KYC AML. And it's going to verify you're the right person connecting to this bank. And it's also going to allow us to see your account number and routing numbers of your liabilities and what type of accounts they are. So now we're pulling those into our system and we're displaying them in your interface so that you can see, here's my student loan debt, my car note, my mortgage, whatever it is. And now you're able to assign the amount of your Reaper token holdings that you want to vote towards that debt by percentage. So you can put 50% or you can put 100%. That's up to you. Now, when we see your vote and we log the vote that comes in at the end of the reaping, now we see, okay, there's this many Reaper tokens have allocated a vote towards this specific debt. And we're dividing the total amount of funds against the total amount of Reaper tokens that voted. So per the number of tokens you hold, we've said, okay, you're getting $150 of debt repayment, and you want it to go towards this debt. What we do is we take all of the funds for debt repayment and we send it over to our payment processor, who has the 50 state money transmitter licenses and all of those fancy shebang. And now we are sending through their API the requests for the payments from our account with them to be sent out to your bank directly to that debt. So we aren't buying the debt. You still have the debt with your regular bank. Nothing has changed in that regard. But we are simply sending that payment to your bank on your behalf because you have signed and agreed to do so by signing up through Plaid.
So, okay. So when you say you're, so I think I misunderstood initially. When you're connecting it to your bank, you don't mean your bank where your money's going in and you can see all your accounts and all of that. You're saying you're connecting it directly to the bank that holds the debt that you're choosing to vote on. And
Yep.
So if I have, if I have 3 accounts at 3 different banks, I would have to Plaid approve them or whatever to to get them connected to Reaper somehow, right?
Yep.
But it's not like you're not like nosing in my checking account and seeing all my accounts and
So we can
all of
see
that.
those. We can see your checking account if we cared enough to go in and find an individual and look. To be clear, we do have that capability, but it's not really of any interest to us. What we're pulling in is just those liability accounts. And we do not have any ability to charge your accounts. We don't need that ability, and we aren't taking or sending money from or to your checking account or savings account. We're simply pulling in that liability so we know where to send the payment to.
Okay. And can you give an example of another company that uses Plaid in this way? Is there any other type of that we could compare it to for people that might not understand how this is working?
So there's really no one that's doing anything like what we're doing yet. We're very novel in that sense. We don't have a competitor yet. I'm sure one will come along as it's a very big market, and I'm sure other offerings will happen. But currently, as it stands, there's no competitor.
So you guys had to. It couldn't have been easy for you to get approval to be able to. I mean, like this is a lot of information that you have access to, right?
Yep.
They're not going to just give any Joe Schmo access to something like this. So I'm assuming there was some kind of, a lot of things that you had to do in order to even get approved. What type of approval did you have to obtain to even be able to do what you're doing?
So Plaid, Circle, and our money processor or our payment processor are all have their own requirements, but for each of them, they wanted to see our KYC AML protocols, so our anti-money laundering policies. They all want to know that we're in touch with FinCEN and other, which is the Financial Center Enforcement Agency. And we we of course have legal representation. Fred Rispoli is our chief legal counsel, so we have a legal opinion letter, and basically proving our credentials, or that we are capable of doing this and carrying it out to each of those companies that we are partnered with. And of course, we are utilizing their licenses in what we are doing. So their licenses are, of course, sacred to them. So we did have to gain their trust and confidence, that we are a legitimate company doing legitimate things, and we've managed to do so. And we're continuing to look for other partners to grow our influence.
Yeah, so this is not just some guys in this mother's basement that created a meme token on the XRP ledger. This is a well thought out, vetted project. The likes of FinCEN and Circle and Plaid, those guys, you're right, they're not going to allow you to come within a 10-foot pole of what they're doing using their service. I can't imagine that they would want that. And I do recognize Plaid, and I do recognize Circle. And of course, I mean, FinCEN, if you're communicating with them and, playing by their rules. So, wow, that definitely makes me even more interested. Something that interesting that popped in my mind was you're speaking at this conference next month. And that conference, there's quite a lot of the Nasara Jasara talk there, support. Where do you stand on that? Because this kind of seems like if that were going to come true, your debt reaping aspect or part of this might not be needed in the future.
Yep. So I'm not a proponent to the Nisara Gisara. I do know all of the facts surrounding it, and I do know it was a legitimate proposal at one point that went through the government, and in the early 2000s, it was a strong possibility. I will say that I'm building things to solve the problems as the people want them solved. I'm not relying on anybody else to come in with a magic wand and wipe all the debts clean. If that happened, I'm not going to be mad about it, but I'm not going to wait on that to happen or wait on the magic wand to come in and solve all our problems.
Yeah, it's a proactive approach that you. Cool thing is that it sounds like if that does happen and the debts are wiped clean, then you can just turn your attention on burning all the crap tokens that are out there.
Yeah,
right?
and even if all the debts are wiped clean, people are still going to want to borrow. There's still going to be people
Exactly.
who don't have a home and want a home, and so they're going to borrow to get one. So debt will always be a part of the economy, but what I've built is really a counteraction to that debt to make it so that it is no longer a ball and chain. It can be an asset itself.
I mean, I could really see, if I could see something like this being set up, like say I start buying into it and this becomes successful and, it's there forever. I could give this to my grandchildren.
Yep.
And when they're going to buy a house and they've got the Reaper, it just already sets them up.
And that's a really important point, because now let's think about that situation where you've given this to your grandchildren and it's become, because Reaper is not that inflationary and it's become valuable. Now your grandchildren are quite wealthy with what they've inherited and they don't need to work. And there could be quite a few of the population that has that situation. But we are heading into the AI and robotics age where about 85% of jobs that exist today do not need to exist in perhaps 5 to 10 years, especially in 20 years. So there's a significant reduction in the workforce that is coming simply because of innovations that are happening. And how do we afford those people who are not working a quality of life in the future? And the answer is that if they've already contributed to this system, then this system is affording them a quality of life, and they don't have to work. Potentially, somebody in the future will be able to work 2 to 5 years of their life and retire. And that's a humanity I think we are actually headed towards within the next 100 years. So with this, the way I like to phrase it is, what if we replaced Social Security and Medicare with a RES system like Reaper? Now, Social Security and Medicare is $1.2 trillion per year that goes into the system. So the people who have already done the labor, they put the work in, they've earned into it, they are receiving the benefit of the future workforce based off that 50% that's going towards the reaping. But you, when you put in, you're influencing the amount you're going to get from that Social Security Medicare allotment, the 50% being $600 billion. That's going to grow over time as that money grows with inflation. So now you don't necessarily need to continue to work and drain and kill your soul for another 50 years. You actually have a future simply off of what you've done. And that's really important, because we are going into a situation where there's a lot of governments have already tried out universal basic income. Yeah. Universal basic income is communist, socialist, and it doesn't work, is the main problem. But this is a utilitarian earned income. So if you have a utilitarian earned income where what you put in is what you receive back, now if only 15% of the population is doing the work, it still makes sense. It's still capitalism, and people can still live healthy, happy, high quality lives.
Yeah. Wow. I have to say, there's 208 people watching. I'm so excited. Please like, share, and subscribe to our Dip a Toe show. We're trying to grow our channel. If you're watching on YouTube, we're at Dip a Toe, and Rumble, same. We don't have a lot of followers. It'd be super great to have 200 followers when we left. And then